everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Palmyre and this is a channel where we talk about Jack the Ripper. I also talk about my life in London, but yeah, it's mainly about Jack the Ripper. I am French, I have a cat called Sherlock and I moved to London around 6 years ago. Today is going to be quite a long video because I've got 10 pages of notes. The look today is brought to you by me. Hair and makeup by me, and the dress I bought it last year. You probably wonder why this look, because that's not the usual look on my videos, and because this video will probably be posted around Halloween next week, I thought that I would glam myself up and would give you Morticia Adams realness. My flatmate said Meryl Streep in Death Becomes Her. You can't see the full dress unfortunately, but yeah, it's a Morticia dress. That's the fantasy. And now let's get into the topic of this video, which is Frederick Deeming. Frederick Bailey Deeming. He was called the greatest criminal of the century back in the 1880s, more 1891 or 2, because that's when he got executed. He's a murderer, a swindler, and a bigamist. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but yeah, that's how the Daily Mail introduced him. A few weeks ago, the Daily Fail, because we never really liked that newspaper, posted an article about a new book called The Devil's Work by a journalist called Gary Linnell. And basically, Gary just came up with that book saying that Frederick Bailey Deeming is Jack the Ripper and he's got new evidence supporting his claim. And we know, like every 2 or 3 years, there's a new book coming up, someone coming up saying like, oh, I got Jack the Ripper. It's funny though that every time it's the Daily Mail reporting about these books. Like I remember for Aaron Kosminski back in 2014 when there was the new DNA on the shawl belonging to Catherine Eddowes that was linking back to Aaron Kosminski, and there was a book again saying like, I found Jack the Ripper. It was again the Daily Fail. So the Daily Fail is always up for a Jack the Ripper suspect or theory. I don't know why. This time it's Frederick Deeming, Frederick Bailey Deeming, and I thought that for once we could do a video about a suspect to see if it matched and talk about who he is. So he used to be on my list. He used to be like 3rd on my list of potential suspects. And I feel like we all have like, oh my god, this is him moment, depending on what we read or what we watch. And I remember that I had a time where I was watching a lot of documentaries on YouTube about Jack the Ripper, and I saw that theory about Frederick Deeming and I was like, oh dude, that's him. And now that I read and I did some research for this video, I'm not that convinced anymore. And I haven't read the book that the Daily Fail is mentioning in The Devil's Work. I haven't got a copy. Everything that will be in this video will be from research I've done on other mediums, so it's the casebook, the website, or other websites talking about him. I can't say if that book is right or wrong because I haven't read it. I'm not sure if it's a new book or not. I should have probably looked into it and I haven't, but I've got 10 pages of notes and I don't know about that, so that's great work. Now that we know what we're going to talk about, let's talk about Frederick Bailey Deeming, who he is and, well, who he was, and why it could be a potential suspect for Jack the Ripper and why not. Because there's many reasons why he could be, but there are also like a few reasons why he couldn't be, but they make sense, if that makes sense. Frederick Deeming was born in England in 1853, but on some other website I've seen 1842, and I've seen 1842 way more than 1853, so we'll keep 1842. He was born in Kent in a very, very religious family. He's the youngest of 7 children and he's the 4th son. He was very, very close with his mother. Some would say that it was kind of a naturally strong relationship with her, and when she passed away in 1873, Frederick was pretty devastated and took to the sea, especially that he didn't have a really good relationship with his father. His father said that Frederick had the devil in him and he would beat him up quite often. His father was mentally ill, which is not excusing what he did to Frederick as a child, but it was said that he was hearing voices in his head and he thought that one of his homes was haunted, and he tried to kill himself by cutting his throat 4 times. which kind of linked to what Frederick did later, and he passed away in an asylum. That sets not a great base for Frederick, which doesn't really excuse what he did after. Just to say like where he comes from. When Frederick was an adult, people would refer to him as Mad Fred because he was really eccentric. He would talk to himself out loud on the street. Sometimes he said that it was because he was talking to his mother. He said that he saw her ghost talking to him. He also said that his mother, her spirit, made him do some things from being the grave. Even from his appearance, Frederick was quite eccentric compared to everyone else. He had like a light ginger mustache that would tumble on his lips to look like theater curtains. He would wear a lot of really expensive jewelry, and that again we'll see that later on where that was coming from. And he was often dressed in really formal clothing as if he was going to attend someone's funeral. Maybe he was like a goth at the time, I don't know, maybe a Victorian goth, maybe he was just different. But yeah, he didn't really fit in. He was quite eccentric compared to everyone else at the time, which didn't stop him from having a pretty good life because he married his childhood sweetheart, Mary James, in 1881. They moved to Australia at that time and they had 4 children together. In 1882 he spent 6 weeks in prison in Sydney for theft. By that time he had multiple affairs with barmaids and housewives, so he would still do one to give to the other. But he was a gas fitter who would have affairs with some housewives whose husbands were at work, and he would steal their jewels to give them to the barmaids or sell. And the housewives would be in a position where they couldn't even complain to their husband because they had cheated on their husbands. They couldn't even say anything, so he would get away with it. At the beginning of 1888, Jack the Ripper year, he spent 14 days in jail for bankruptcy and decided to move to South Africa with his family under an alias. That was all in January 1888, just to place him around that time so that we know where he is. Frederick Deeming was a big user of aliases. He had up to 35, so the one he used in South Africa was one of them. He had others back in Australia and he will have some more later. We'll see about that. What happened after is quite unclear because we struggled placing him, but at some point they moved all back to the UK, to England. It's unclear if he moved first or if he moved his wife and his children first. It really was a matter of website or either reports I've seen on his life. It was not really clear. There's a big we don't know what happened there. They moved back to England in 1888, but it's unclear who moved when. The next time we find him in Hull under the alias of Harry Lawson, a rich Australian pastoralist and owner of a gold mine. He married Nellie Matheson, linked to Matty Matheson? I don't know, maybe. So if you don't know, I have a big crush on Matty Matheson. I know it's not the topic of this video, but my god. Anyway, so he married Nellie Matheson in 1890. Around that same year, he spent 9 months in jail for scamming a jeweler. That's what I was explaining earlier. That's an important fact because some people were placing Deeming in jail in 1888 in Hull and would say that he couldn't be Jack the Ripper because he was in jail at the time, but it turns out that it was in 1890, not 1888. He tried to escape to Uruguay, but he was caught once he got there and was sent back. So that's pretty big for the police at that time to be able to trace someone all that way up to Uruguay to send him back to the UK. Pretty impressive, even though a cab. So when he got out of jail on the 26th of July, he moved by himself to Merseyside, Birkenhead, where his alias was Albert Williams, a senior army official. There he started leasing the Denham Villa, which is the place of the future murders, and he also started courting Emily Mather. Let's not forget that by that time he had 2 wives. 2 wives! I can't get a text back, but he managed to get 2 wives and a third on the way. So, great. He had Mary James, which was his childhood sweetheart, and Nellie Matheson, which we never hear from her again after they got married. Not that she disappeared, it's just that she's not part of the end of the story. So just before his wedding to Emily, yes, a third wedding, his first wife, remember her, Mary James, moved to the villa with their children. Deeming moved to the local hotel saying that the visitors are his sister and her children and that they're not going to stay for a long long time. Which is true because on the night of the 11th of August of that year, 1890, Frederick Bailey Deeming killed his first wife, Mary James, and their 4 children. He used a native battle axe to knock them out before slicing their throat, cutting their throat from ears to ears. Sometimes the cut was so severe that the head was almost not attached to the body. They were all found wearing night clothes, so it's assumed that maybe he killed them during their sleep. He only cut the throat of 3 of his children and he strangled the youngest one. He disposed of their body under the kitchen floor, burying them under layers and layers of cement. After marrying Emily on the 22nd of September 1890, they both moved to Australia, to the Melbourne suburb of Windsor. Unfortunately for Emily, it didn't last long. On the night of Christmas Eve that year, he killed her. He used the same method as he did with his family. He hit her head with an axe and then cut her throat. He buried her under the headstone of one of the fireplaces in one of the bedrooms in the house. Her body was discovered after new tenants complained about the smell, something that Frederick didn't really think through. The soil in Australia is not the same as the soil in the UK, and it doesn't hide a body as well as the soil in the UK. He had paid at least 6 months rent after Emily died, but new tenants visited the place and would complain to the landlady about the smell, and that's how they found Emily's body. And because of the discovery of Emily's body, they found the bodies of Mary James and the children at the Denham Villa, because Emily's mother back in the UK got contacted by the police in Melbourne and they told her, your daughter is dead. And she remembered that Frederick had made some work in the kitchen at the time before they moved, and she was really unsettled about the fact that he had to do some work with cement. So she contacted the police in the UK and said, look, I'm not sure if there's anything here, but he did some work to the house before he moved to Australia with my daughter. He used cement, and that's what he used with Emily, and that's how they discovered the body. But that was 7 months after they were killed. Deeming didn't waste any time. When Emily's body was found, he was already courting someone else, a young woman called Kate Ronsfeld. She was really reluctant and she took her time with him. Frederick is quite quick. He finds someone, court someone, marry them quite quickly. Kate was really not that in a haste and took her time and said no a couple of times. And lucky for her, Frederick was arrested before she said yes to anything. After his arrest, Frederick Bailey Deeming was trialed and executed on the 23rd of May 1892. A crowd of more than 10,000 people celebrated on the street. He was said to be the most hated man in Australia at the time. So now, why is he a suspect? Because that's quite different to what happened with Jack the Ripper, right? Why do people think that Frederick Bailey Deeming is a potential Jack the Ripper suspect when his story kind of separates him from what we know about Jack? It's not like he killed like that on the go. First of all, Frederick Deeming claimed that he contracted the syphilis from a sex worker. Again, that's only based on the assumption that all Jack the Ripper's victims were sex workers, which we now know that it's not true. But some still stick to that theory and say that because Deeming said that he contracted syphilis from a sex worker and that he hated them and claimed that he would kill the one who gave him the syphilis. Some people say that that could be a reason why he could be Jack the Ripper and killed those women. One of the other reasons is also because of his appearance. So he had a very fair, light ginger mustache, and Catherine Eddowes was seen talking to a man with a fair mustache on the night she died. Jack has been described being between 5'5" and 5'7", and Frederick Deeming was 5'6". There's also the whole thing about the coat, a really long coat, a gold chain watch. Jack was described to have a carroty mustache, really strange eyes, a large coat, and a gold chain watch, which Deeming had. A lot of people described his eyes. There's similarities in the description of Jack and Deeming. He also matched the portrait that was drawn of Jack. Some people recognize him from that. Deeming also asked a jeweler to clean a pair of blood-stained surgical dissecting knives. He had 20 knives and weapons of all types. He hinted at some point that he had a secret in his past that would shake the nation. And while he was in prison, waiting for his execution, he confessed to the last two Whitechapel murders, which is weird why he would confess to just Catherine and Mary Jane, but not Elizabeth Try, which was on the same night as Catherine Eddowes. Again, why? Maybe he just liked the attention and confessed to something that he didn't do. Also, let's not forget that he cut the throat of 5 of his 6 victims. So that makes it a bit like, oh, he cut throats just like Jack. That kind of links them together. They do kind of the same thing, even though it's not the same people that they killed, but still. Some theories about Jack say that he's never been caught because he would dress up, and that's why we never saw the same man with the victims. He was described as different person every time, so that's why Deeming could fit the profile, because he had a lot of aliases and would probably dress up to be a different person in different cities, so that could work. Frederick Deeming also fit the FBI profile of Jack that was done by some FBI agent. My favorite theories of them all, though, it's the one about his death mask. So basically, when Deeming was executed, they shaved his mustache and created a mold with plaster to create a wax figure of his face. It was called a death mask, and it was something that was being done at the time. So the thing about the death mask is that it used to be shown to the visitors of the Crime Museum at New Scotland Yard as the face of Jack the Ripper. For me, it was quite exciting when I heard that fact, because I'm like, dude, if Scotland Yard tells you that that's Jack the Ripper, they're the ones who investigated about Jack, so if they show you that death mask as Jack the Ripper, then it is Jack the Ripper. I mean, that was the thing that made me really believe in Deeming as Jack the Ripper, because I was like, Scotland Yard, I mean the new one, probably know better than anyone else about Jack the Ripper, because they have the files and everything, even though loads of the files have disappeared. Weirdly, they kind of know better than us. So if they have his face and they say, oh, that guy is Jack the Ripper, then I would believe it. The death mask is still at the Black Museum in New Scotland Yard, but you can't access it. It's my dream to visit it, but only police forces or former police forces can visit the museum. I always say that I want to be arrested just to have the chance to visit the Black Museum. There was an exhibition of the Crime Museum at the Museum of London a few years ago, I think 2015, just after I moved here. And I don't know how, but I missed it and I didn't know about it, and I'm just so pissed off at myself that I missed that chance to see the Crime Museum. But yeah, you can still see his face. I don't think now it's presented as Jack the Ripper, but yeah, Deeming is still there. It kind of makes sense because of what he did in the UK. One of the facts that places Deeming as a Jack the Ripper suspect is that someone recognized Deeming from a picture in 1892 and placed Deeming in London on the night of the double event, the murder of Liz Stride and Catherine Eddowes. They also said that Deeming seemed quite agitated the next day, so that's quite weird. To be fair, at the same time, if you read about murders, you kind of don't feel good. Like, I don't think that being agitated could make you be the murderer. Like, you know, you could be agitated for any other reason. The fact that he seemed quite agitated on the day after the double event kind of also looks suspicious to me. I don't know. What do you think? When Deeming was incarcerated waiting for his execution, the police from the UK wanted to talk to him about the London murders, aka the Whitechapel murders. Up to 5 years after his execution, the police in Australia would receive telegraph from the police in South Africa and America because they wanted to talk to them, or to Deeming, even though now he was dead, about murders that happened there. So, you know, it could be that Deeming killed more than just his 2 wives and 4 children and killed other people in different places where he was. But because of his aliases and the fact that he died, we can't really know. That's also why some people say that he could be Jack the Ripper, because he could have done more than just those murders. There's also one fact that could place Deeming as a really good potential Jack the Ripper: the way how he placed the bodies. When he killed Mary James and buried her, he put 2 of the children on either of her sides and put the youngest at her feet. We've seen a placement of body parts or objects around some of the victims, of the Jack the Ripper victim. So now that we've talked about why Deeming could be the Reaper. Let's talk about why he could not be the Reaper and why I think he could not be the Reaper, because there's a few points, but they really make sense. Contrary to Jack, Deeming had a motive. Jack was an opportunist, he was a predator, and he would stalk the dark street of Whitechapel in the lookout for a victim and would kill when and where a victim would present herself. In the case of Deeming, it was different. He premeditated what he did. Deeming abandoned his first family. He abandoned Mary James and he abandoned their 4 children. Mary tracked him twice. She tracked him down to Birkenhead, where she was fatally killed. She went there, she asked for the money for the children that he didn't give them. She found out about Emily when she was there and decided to tell her everything. So she found Emily, she told her that she was his wife and that they had 4 children. Probably that his name was Frederick Deeming, because probably introduced himself into the alias that he used at the time. But she didn't go to the police, luckily for Deeming. And because of that, Deeming felt trapped. He felt vulnerable and he felt like he would never feel safe as long as Mary lived. He had to kill her. But why did he kill Emily then? He didn't have to kill her, but he killed Emily as a way to cover himself. In his plan, Mary James' body would be found before Emily's body, and he would run away and say that Emily killed Mary because she found out about Mary's existence and their children, and so Emily killed the whole family to have Deeming for herself. But luckily and unfortunately for Deeming, the bodies were found in the wrong order. Emily's body was found first, and then Mary James and the children's body were found. So it couldn't be that Emily killed Mary because they found Emily's body buried in cement the same way that Mary James was buried. We can also say that Deeming can't be Jack because they don't share the same modus operandi. Deeming made unconscious his victim with an axe to the head and then slit their throat. He didn't rape the body, he didn't do anything with the body after that apart from hiding it. So we can say that there's nothing matching here, and the fact that Jack didn't make any effort at hiding the victims, at hiding the body, but would make a spectacle of that, compared to Deeming, who hid the bodies under cement and under the floor of his house or the fireplace, shows that we can't say that it's the same person because they don't share the same modus operandi of killing and also disposing of the bodies. That list, even short, can tell you that Deeming can't be Jack. To me, it doesn't make any sense. You can't kill someone a certain way, go on a frenzy of killing 5 women or 6 women or even more in London in a certain type of way. And we see with the Jack the Ripper murders, there's an escalation of the gruesomeness. He goes from Martha Tabram just stabbing her a certain number of times in the stomach to Mary Jane Kelly. You can't do that and then do what he did to his family and Emily. It just doesn't make sense. You don't change of modus operandi that much, especially the explanation of why he would have killed in Whitechapel just because he contracted syphilis from a sex worker just doesn't make sense. It doesn't really explain. You know, you kind of want more than just that, and also not all victims were sex workers. For me, at the time when I watched the documentaries, I really thought that Deeming was Jack because it made sense. The fact that he looks like what people have described Jack, the fact that some people saw him there in London, his death mask in Scotland Yard just made sense. But when you get more into it and you look at how he killed Mary, the children, Emily, and how the Whitechapel victims were killed, it doesn't match. And to me, that's just, I really don't think Deeming could be Jack the Ripper. But again, I base my judgment on my research and not the new book. So I would probably need to read that book and see what that book says. But for me, with the knowledge and what I've found, I really can't say that Deeming is Jack the Ripper. One thing that I would say though is that it's really sad what happened to Mary, the children, and Emily. It's just really sad to see lives being lost like that because someone just felt trapped and decided to get rid of what made him feel unsafe and vulnerable. It's a pattern that we kind of see, I don't want to say often, but we kind of see the father figure or the father of family destroy his whole family when something happens and he feels like there's no way to escape it, and he just decides to kill his family. Sometimes they kill themselves too, but sometimes they just kill their family and disappear. There's a case in France that happened a few years ago. The whole family was killed and the father disappeared and we still don't know where he is. And it just feels like they had like a lot of debts and he felt like he couldn't face it. He couldn't face dishonor, which is quite sad because the family never asked for anything and probably they had talked to their wives, or in this case probably divorced Mary James and tried to make up with Emily or find someone else. I don't know, because he kind of like find other people quite easily, or therapy could have helped. So it's quite sad that lives were lost because of his insecurities. But I guess it's something that we see all the time. Anyway, when I was doing the research, it was really hard because reading about murders and, children being killed is quite hard. But there was also a sentence that I saw on the casebook that really, really made me sad and my heart really hurt for the Whitechapel victims. I'm going to read it to you because I just don't think it's fair. It's written by people that follow the Jack the Ripper case, that know about the Jack the Ripper case. It's people that are invested in knowing who Jack the Ripper is. So I feel that writing something like that, so disrespectful to the Whitechapel victims, is just heartbreaking. And I feel like there will be a video about the casebook and what I think about Ripperologists in general, even though I don't know that many. But from what I see on that website and other websites, doesn't really shed a good light on Ripperologists. So I'm just going to read you that sentence and then end the video. So I took my laptop to read you the sentence that I was mentioning just before. So I'm just going to read it from my laptop, so I'm sorry if I don't look at the camera just now. But the sentence is, as vile as the Ripper murders were, he at least confined himself to world-weary prostitutes, never stooping so low as to cut the throats of 4 defenseless children. To call the Whitechapel victims world-weary prostitutes is quite diminishing their existence to just what we assume they were, like we know now. And especially I would expect someone who knows about Jack the Ripper more than anyone else, Ripperologists know more about Jack the Ripper than me, than you, than someone on the street. So I would expect them to respect the victim way more and also know by now that they were not all sex workers and just refer them as world-weary prostitutes. It's really disrespectful, and I would expect someone who knows about Jack the Ripper as much as that person probably do to respect the victim more. I see the point that they try to make here, saying that even though the Whitechapel murders were horrible, at least he didn't kill children. But they put value on lives, saying that because they were world-weary prostitutes, they were less worthy of living, and the murder of a child is worse than killing them because, they were just prostitutes. Killing a child is horrible, but killing anyone is bad. And I don't think that because they were prostitutes, it's better than killing children. And I just don't think that it should have been pointed out. Everyone is worth it. We're all here. We all share the same experience of being alive. And I don't think that anyone has more value than anyone else. And I feel like the person who wrote that note shouldn't have made that point, especially to end an article about Deeming. Yes, he was a piece of shit. He killed his wife and he killed his children. But Jack is also a piece of shit for killing defenseless women on the street. And there's no one is worse than the other. Both are really horrible and they're just piece of shit for doing what they did. And that's the point I'm going to end the video on. Deeming killing his wives and children, or Jack killing 5 defenseless women, are the same. It's just murder. It's just really, really horrible murders, and both killers are a piece of shit because they shouldn't have done that. It's just horrible, and none of them is worse than the other. They're just both bad. Anyway, that's how I'm going to end this video. I know it was a long one and it's probably a hard one to watch because of what I describe in this video. I don't know what the next one will be. It will probably be on From Hell. I kind of jump on the trend of Deeming being mentioned in the Daily Fail and kind of forgot the plan I had. So yeah, I think next time we will have a video on From Hell. I haven't finished yet the book, which is pretty bad. I will finish the book. I will tell you what I think about the film, what I think about this theory, and maybe I will, tell you about the Freemason Museum because I visited it, because I was like, well, it's quite relevant to Jack. I don't know. Anyway, until next time, take care, enjoy life, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye!